Gervonta, Tank, gave his entire salary to an unknown family. Reason? Impressive. The electric atmosphere in Las Vegas was palpable as Gervonta Tank Davis made his way to the ring. The arena was packed to the brim, every seat occupied by eager fans who had come to witness what was being hailed as the fight of the century. The energy was infectious, spreading through the crowd like wildfire as they waited with bated breath for the main event to begin. As Tank stepped into the spotlight, his opponent was introduced, an undefeated fighter with a reputation for devastating knockouts. The stakes were higher than ever before, with promoters announcing a record-breaking purse for the victor. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as both fighters touched gloves, ready to give their all for glory and an unprecedented payday. From the moment the bell rang, Tank demonstrated why he was considered one of the most talented boxers of his generation. His footwork was impeccable, his head movement elusive, and his punches landed with pinpoint accuracy. Round after round, he outmaneuvered his opponent, showcasing a level of technical skill that left even the most seasoned boxing analysts in awe. During the brief respite between rounds, Tank found himself reflecting on the long and arduous journey that had brought him to this moment. He thought about the countless hours of training, the sacrifices he had made, and the unwavering support of his team and loved ones. It was a bittersweet moment of introspection amidst the chaos of the fight. Unbeknownst to Tank, a mysterious man watched intently from the stands, his eyes never leaving the ring. His presence went unnoticed by the cheering crowd, but his interest in the fight seemed to go beyond that of a typical spectator. As the final bell rang, there was no doubt in anyone's mind who the victor would be. The referee raised Tank's hand high, declaring him the undisputed champion. The crowd erupted in a deafening roar as confetti rained down from the ceiling, creating a surreal scene of celebration and triumph. In the post-fight ceremony, Tank was presented with an oversized check, symbolizing the enormous sum he had just earned. Cameras flashed incessantly, capturing the moment for posterity. Yet, despite the jubilant atmosphere and his incredible achievement, something seemed off about Tank's demeanor. Where one might expect to see unbridled joy and excitement, Tank's expression was oddly distant and contemplative. His teammates and cornermen exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what to make of his subdued reaction. It was as if, in the moment of his greatest professional triumph, Tank's mind was already elsewhere. As the arena slowly emptied and the excitement of the night began to wane, Tank found himself alone with his thoughts. The weight of the victory and the enormous sum he had just earned seemed to press down on him, bringing with it a sense of responsibility he had never felt before. Little did he know that this night, which should have been the pinnacle of his career, was about to set in motion a chain of events that would change his life and the lives of others in ways he could never have imagined. The bustling energy of the post-fight festivities faded into the background as Gervonta Tank Davis slipped away from his entourage. Despite the chorus of congratulations and the constant flash of cameras, he felt an inexplicable need for solitude. The plush carpets of the hotel corridor muffled his footsteps as he wandered aimlessly, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. It was in this state of distraction that Tank turned a corner and stumbled upon a scene that would alter the course of his life. In a dimly lit alcove, barely visible from the main hallway, sat a woman. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, her face buried in her hands. The sight stopped Tank in his tracks, his instincts urging him to help despite his usual tendency to avoid personal entanglements. "Ma'am," he called out softly, not wanting to startle her. "Are you all right?" The woman looked up, her tear-stained face a mask of surprise and embarrassment. She hurriedly tried to compose herself, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't think anyone would be here." Tank approached cautiously, his fighter's bravado replaced by genuine concern. "Is there anything I can do to help?" The woman, who introduced herself as Maria, hesitated before the dam of her emotions broke. She poured out her story to Tank, her words tumbling over each other in a rush of desperation and grief. A devastating fire had consumed everything she and her family owned, leaving them with nothing but the clothes on their backs. "We're staying at a shelter now," Maria explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not much, but it's all we have. I never thought we'd end up like this." As Maria spoke, Tank felt a tightening in his chest. The stark contrast between the opulence surrounding him and the destitution Maria described was jarring. He found himself asking for more details, wanting to understand the full extent of her family's situation. Maria described the cramped conditions at the shelter, the struggle to keep her children fed and clothed, and the constant fear of what the future might hold. "We need help," she admitted, "but I don't know where to turn. I never expected to pour my heart out to a stranger in a hotel corridor." Tank listened intently, his mind racing. The amount of money he had just won flashed through his thoughts, along with all the plans he had made for it. But now, faced with Maria's plight, those plans seemed hollow and self-indulgent. "I want to help," Tank said, the words leaving his mouth before he had fully processed them. "I'm not sure how yet, but I promise I'll do something." Maria looked at him with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "That's very kind of you," she said, "but I've learned not to expect miracles." Tank felt a surge of determination. "Sometimes miracles happen when you least expect them," he replied, a plan already forming in his mind. He didn't reveal the details to Maria, not wanting to raise her hopes prematurely, but he knew with certainty that he couldn't walk away from this encounter without taking action. As they parted ways, Tank headed back to his room with renewed purpose. The elation of his victory had been replaced by something deeper, a sense of responsibility and the potential to make a real difference in someone's life. He knew that the decision he was contemplating would be met with resistance and disbelief, but in his heart, he felt it was the right thing to do. That night, as the city continued to buzz with excitement over the fight, Tank lay awake, his mind filled not with thoughts of his triumph in the ring, but with images of Maria and her family. He realized that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with fists, but with compassion and generosity. With this revelation, he drifted off to sleep, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The morning after his chance encounter with Maria, Gervonta "Tank" Davis called an urgent meeting with his team. As they gathered in his suite, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. His manager, Jake, was already discussing potential endorsement, deals and investment opportunities, his eyes gleaming with the promise of even greater riches to come. "Tank, my man," Jake began, clapping him on the shoulder. "We've got offers pouring in. This win has skyrocketed your value. We're talking about doubling, maybe even tripling your net worth if we play our cards right." The rest of the team chimed in, each with their own ideas on how to capitalize on Tank's newfound success. One suggested investing in real estate, another proposed launching a line of boxing gear. The room buzzed with excitement and grand plans for the future, but Tank remained quiet, his expression unreadable. As the chatter died down, all eyes turned to him, waiting for his input. Taking a deep breath, he finally spoke. "I've made a decision about the prize money," he said, his voice steady and determined. "I'm going to give it away, all of it." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake was the first to recover, letting out a nervous laugh. "Good one, Tank. Now seriously, what's the plan?" "I am serious," Tank replied, his gaze unwavering. "I met someone last night, a woman named Maria. Her family lost everything in a fire. They're living in a shelter. I want to give them the money." The room erupted in protests. Jake's face turned red as he sputtered, "Are you out of your mind? This is your future we're talking about. You can't just throw it away on some stranger." Tank's childhood friend, Marcus, tried a different approach. "Look, Tank, I get that you want to help, but there are other ways. We could set up a charity, do some fundraising. You don't have to give away everything you've worked so hard for." As the arguments raged around him, Tank's mind drifted back to his own childhood. He remembered the leaky roof of their small apartment, the nights when dinner was nothing more than a slice of bread and hope. He thought of his mother, working multiple jobs, her hands calloused and her eyes tired, but always finding a way to make ends meet. "You don't understand," Tank said quietly, silencing the room. "When I was a kid, there were times when a little help would have meant the world to us. Small gestures, things that might not seem like much to someone else, could have changed everything." Looked around at his team, his voice growing stronger. "This money, it's a lot to us, yeah. But to Maria and her family, It's not just money. It's a chance at a new life. It's hope. Jake threw his hands up in exasperation. But your career, your future. What about all the plans we made? Tank's response was calm, but firm. My career isn't over. I'll earn more money. But right now, money can do more good in their hands than it ever could in mine. The team exchanged glances, a mixture of shock, admiration, and concern on their faces. They knew Tank well enough to recognize when his mind was made up, but the magnitude of his decision was hard to comprehend. So what's the plan? Marcus finally asked, his voice resigned but supportive. Tank's eyes lit up as he outlined his intentions. He would meet with Maria the next day at the shelter where her family was staying. He would give her the entire prize, purse, no strings attached. As the reality of Tank's decision sank in, the mood in the room shifted. There was still disbelief, but also a growing sense of respect. They were witnessing something extraordinary. A champion at the height of his career, choosing compassion over personal gain. As the meeting drew to a close, Tank felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be questions, criticism, maybe even ridicule, but in his heart, he was certain. This was more than just a generous gesture. It was a chance to change lives, to create a legacy beyond the boxing ring. That night, as he prepared to meet Maria and her family, Tank felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. He was about to embark on a journey that would redefine not just his career, but his entire life's purpose. The following day, Gervonta "Tank" Davis found himself standing outside a nondescript building in a part of the city far removed from the glitz and glamour of the Las Vegas Strip. This was the shelter where Maria and her family had been staying since losing everything in the fire. As he approached the entrance, Tank felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The weight of the envelope in his pocket, a constant reminder of the life-changing decision he had made. Inside, the shelter bustled with activity. Despite the challenging circumstances, children laughed and played, their resilience a testament to the human spirit. Tank's eyes scanned the room, searching for Maria among the faces. When he finally spotted her, he was struck by the look of surprise that flashed across her face. "You actually came," Maria said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and hope as she approached him. Tank nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I made a promise, didn't I?" As they found a quiet corner to talk, Tank couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the opulence he had left behind at the hotel and the humble surroundings of the shelter. The reality of Maria's situation hit him even harder than before. With slightly trembling hands, Tank reached into his pocket and pulled out the envelope. "Maria," he began, his voice soft but firm. "I want to give you this. It's the prize money from my fight." Maria's eyes widened as she realized what Tank was offering. She reached out hesitantly, then pulled her hand back. I can't accept this," she stammered. "It's too much. You don't even know us." Tank gently pressed the envelope into her hands. "I know enough," he said. "I know that you and your family need a chance, a new start. This money can give you that." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she looked down at the envelope, then back at Tank. "But why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this for strangers?" Tank took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "Because sometimes, all it takes is one act of kindness to change a life. I've been fortunate in my career, and now I have the opportunity to make a real difference. I want to give your family that chance." As the reality of the situation sank in, Maria's children gathered around, curious about the stranger talking to their mother. Tank knelt down to their level, smiling as he explained in simple terms that they would soon have a new home. The children's eyes lit up with excitement, and for the first time since he'd met her, Tank saw a genuine smile break across Maria's face. It was a moment of pure joy that he knew he would remember for the rest of his life. As word spread through the shelter about what was happening, people began to gather around. Some took out their phones, capturing the moment on video and in photos. Tank, usually comfortable in the spotlight, felt a different kind of attention on him now, one of awe and admiration for his act of generosity. Maria, still in shock but overwhelmed with gratitude, promised Tank that she would use the money wisely. "This isn't just money," she said, her voice choked with emotion. This is a future for my children, a chance we never thought we'd have. I don't know how to thank you enough." As Tank prepared to leave, he was surrounded by well-wishers, many with tears in their eyes. The atmosphere in the shelter had transformed from one of quiet desperation to one of hope and possibility. Outside, Tank noticed a few reporters had gathered, alerted by the social media buzz that was already building. He realized that his actions would soon be public knowledge, but for once, he didn't mind the attention. This was a story worth telling, not for his sake, but for the impact it might have on others. As he made his way back to his car, Tank felt a profound sense of peace. The exhilaration of winning the fight paled in comparison to the joy he felt in this moment. He had entered the ring as a champion boxer, but he was leaving this shelter as something more, a beacon of hope and kindness in a world that often seemed too focused on personal gain. Little did Tank know that his act of generosity was about to spark a movement that would extend far beyond the walls of that small shelter in Las Vegas. Within hours of Gervonta "Tank" Davis leaving the shelter, news of his extraordinary act of generosity spread like wildfire. Social media platforms exploded with posts, shares, and comments about the boxing champion who had given away his entire fight purse to a family in need. The story was quickly picked up by major news outlets, dominating headlines across the country and beyond. As Tank watched the coverage from his hotel room, he was overwhelmed by the response. Sports commentators who usually dissected his boxing technique were now praising his character. Fans flooded his social media accounts with messages of support and admiration. Even some of his fiercest critics in the boxing world couldn't help but commend his selfless act. But it wasn't just the media attention that was remarkable. Tank's actions had sparked something deeper, a wave of inspiration that was beginning to ripple through the sports world and beyond. Other athletes, moved by Tank's example, began to step forward with their own acts of kindness. A basketball star announced he would pay for the college education of an entire graduating class from his old high school. A football team collectively decided to donate a significant portion of their bonuses to rebuild a community center destroyed by a natural disaster. The impact wasn't limited to the world of sports. Ordinary people, inspired by Tank's generosity, started their own initiatives to help those in need in their communities. The hashtag #BeLikeTank trended globally, with people sharing stories of kindness and encouraging others to make a difference. Meanwhile, Maria and her family were adjusting to their new reality. With Tank's gift, they were able to move out of the shelter and into a modest but comfortable home. The children, once worried about where their next meal would come from, were now excited about returning to school and dreaming of their futures. Maria, true to her word, used the money wisely. She enrolled in vocational training courses, determined to secure a stable job to support her family in the long term. She also set aside a portion of the money for her children's education, ensuring that Tank's generosity would have a lasting impact on their lives. As the weeks passed, Tank received countless messages from people around the world, thanking him for reminding them of the power of compassion. But it was a message from Maria that touched him the most. She sent a photo of her family in their new home, all smiling, brightly, with a simple caption: "You didn't just give us money. You gave us hope." Inspired by the outpouring of support and the impact of his actions, Tank made a decision that would shape the rest of his career and life. He announced the creation of the Tank Davis Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting families in crisis situations similar to Maria's. "Success in the ring is important," Tank said at the press conference announcing the foundation. "But the true measure of success is what we do for others. This foundation is my commitment to continuing that work, to fighting for those who need it most outside the ring." The foundation quickly gained support from other athletes, celebrities, and businesses, all eager to be part of the movement Tank had started. It became a powerful force for change, providing not just financial assistance, but also resources for education, job training, and community development. As Tank prepared for his next fight, he found himself approaching his training with a new sense of purpose. Each punch thrown, each mile run was not just for his own glory, but for the people he could help with his success. His trainer noticed a change in him, a newfound focus and determination that made him an even more formidable fighter. In the years that followed, Gervonta "Tank" Davis would go on to win many more fights and titles. But ask anyone about his legacy, And they wouldn't just talk about his lightning-fast punches or his championship belts. They would talk about the lives he changed, the hope he inspired, and the way he showed that true strength isn't measured by what you can take, but by what you're willing to give. As Tank stood in the ring before his next big fight, he looked out at the crowd and saw faces wearing t-shirts with the "Be Like Tank" slogan. He smiled, knowing that his greatest victory had already been won outside the ring. In that moment, he wasn't just a boxer, he was a symbol of compassion, a reminder that one act of kindness can start a revolution of the heart. Dear friends, help our community and subscribe to the channel. Leave your like, and don't forget to rate our story from 0 to 10 in the comments. Thank you.